Welcome back, everybody. Hot mic off and rolling. New week. Jeff Kolpak will join us about a half hour. We'll get this update on what's going on with Bison football. Tom Miller will give us an update on UND football about an hour from now. Each and every Monday, we have our next guest join us, and I tweeted it at him. He's one of the sickos, and be excited about Week 0, which is just a few days away. This is the last true Week 0, folks. Enjoy it, because next year we're going to have Week 1 of the FCS before the FBS get into the party. As Sam Herder joins us from Hero Sports, BetMGM. All right, what's your favorite Week 0 moment? You have one that stands out in here. The Bison-Montana game probably comes to mind, at least for me.
Yeah, that's probably the number one game.
Yeah.
But there's been, what was it? Eastern Washington and Sam Houston.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
That was a wildly entertaining game. Even, I believe was it NSU Charleston Southern?
It was,
that
the Week 0 game.
Yep. That was another one.
Yep.
And then I think it was the next year's when they started playing it at a neutral site. Which, that's an ESPN decision, and they got some sponsors, and so they moved it to a neutral site. But it's at a neutral site again. UC Davis, Mercer, in Montgomery, Alabama. That's probably the best matchup we've seen in Montgomery. Two quarterfinalists from last year.
Yeah.
I don't know where things are at, if they're ever going to move that to a home site or not. But Mercer has a pretty decent home atmosphere. If you would have played that in Mercer, I think you would have had a better atmosphere. But it is what it is.
Mercer head coach Mike Jacobs actually going to be on Hot Mic on Thursday. Looking forward to that, to chat about the game and getting started this early. For these teams, they've been going, Sam, for almost a month now. I'm really interested to see how this, you got Incarnate Word and Nichols. That's a conference game. We talked about this last week or maybe 2 weeks ago with the Big Sky decision to start next year. They're going to play conference games in Week 0. I'm really interested on that because this is a big game out of the chute. I'm not sure how good Nichols is going to be. I think we're all convinced that UIW is a top 5, top 6 team, but you don't want to mess around with a conference opponent in Week 0. I just don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and this is a glimpse of what, and we talked about this, of what the Big Sky is going to do.
Right.
They're going to play a conference game to start this season, next year. And so this is kind of a glimpse of what I guess it looks like to a certain extent of starting the season with the conference opponent and then rolling into, non-conference, which UIW has a couple of tough non-conference games. I believe they play Northern Arizona is one, and then I think Abilene Christian, is another one. That's 2 playoff teams from last year. So this is a really important game for UIW, to show that they are a legit contender at the FCS level. And, there's some other matchups too, like number 10 Tarleton State. We all believe that they're going to be, a really good football team. They go to Portland State. You kind of expect Tarleton to win that one. But if all of a sudden they get into some sort of shootout at Portland State, maybe it makes you reevaluate them a little bit. And so these Week 0 games are, sometimes they can be a little sloppy, just execution wise, and, maybe some nerves because all of these games are on national television. But it's a good glimpse, overall of some of these teams. And we have 4 ranked opponents playing. You have UIW number 5, Tarleton State number 10, and then UC Davis is number 8, playing number 11 Mercer. So overall, I think it's one of the better Week 0 slates we've had.
The noon kickoff in Thibodaux, Louisiana on August 23rd might be gross. I'll just say it like that. That is not a conducive to maybe a good football playing, as maybe the best way to phrase it.
Well, the things people will do to get on national TV. So that's the time slot they got. And even right after that game, Portland State, are they ready to host ESPN and nationally televised games? So I don't know. It's like you said, it's gonna be some real sickos watching some of these games, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for UIW, this is again I don't know if the bellwether mark for them. We know they're good. We know they've got some really talented, standout, electric players at the positions, at skill positions. The question is not on Nichols. It's for them down the road, because we saw they made the quarters. South Dakota State did whatever they want against them. How do they take that step? They made the semis, remember, with Lindsey Scott in 2022. How did they do that? If they have the team this year or not. I don't know if we're going to find out on Saturday. That, to me, is the great question mark for them as we get to November.
Yeah, and it seems that UIW is, to a certain extent going all in on this season because they've landed, some big time FCS transfers, guys who were all conference guys. I mean, they got, the Southland Conference Player of the Year from a couple of years ago, at running back to come in. They got in Cheaton James, an FCS All American wide receiver from Idaho State to come in. They got, I want to say 5 FCS transfers on the defensive side of the football that were all conference, level guys, including another guy, from Nichols and Tyler Morton, who was an All-American a couple of years ago. You couple that with, for the most part, retaining a lot of their talent, whether it be, their a few starting offensive linemen or their All-American wide receiver from last year, Jalen Wallfall. Wow. A good chunk of their defensive production coming back as well. 11 defensive players who played 250 or more snaps, and so they are super experienced. But as we know, offensive line wasn't where it needed to be last year. No. Defensive line wasn't where it needed to be. Wasn't where it needed to be last year. I don't know if they did enough to address that, to like put them right up there with the North Dakota States, of the world. But, certainly the talent they have on the roster is really, really impressive this year.
I'm counting right here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 games Saturday. That's fantastic. But now I will remember, just, to moonlight for a second, the Sam Houston Eastern Washington game was it. The Bison game with Montana was it. And the bigwigs saw it, said, hey, there's people watching, there's money to be made, and then invaded this, and this is what we're left with now.
Yeah, it was the FCS spotlight for a while, and then FBS moved into it, and you had to get a it's sort of a waiver to play in week 0. Like, you need a national television games to move to week 0. But yeah, like we talked about, the FCS will move fully into week 0 next year, and then it's only a matter of time before the FBS also moves in. And we can take that Thursday national TV window, and we can get more money for that. Okay, let's do that. Move aside FCS.
Here are some of the games. We made a graphic of the games coming up. As we mentioned, there are 5 FCS games. The ones we mentioned, the Incarnate Word Nichols game. Tarleton and Portland State will follow at 3:30 on ESPN2. The Davis Mercer game comes up. That's at 6 o'clock on ESPN. I'm intrigued in this just for both these teams. They both lost a ton, Sam, and they're ranked where they're at from what they did last year. In your mind, which team has the better trajectory to be as good as they were last year, Davis or Mercer?
I think UC Davis, the more I look at them, the more I like. Obviously quarterback and running back are big time question marks, but UC Davis has, it's either 5 or 6 3-star quarterbacks in their quarterback competition right now. Now, all of those guys come from California, and with camps and all that, it's easier to be a 3-star quarterback in California compared to North Dakota or Idaho, for example. But still, the talent level in that quarterback room is immense. And, with Coach Plow, I mean, he's an offensive genius, and you expect them to get good quarterback play no matter who they go with. It kind of sounds like Caden Pinnock is going to be their guy. He's only a redshirt freshman. He's battling with Grant Harper, who's a 6-year senior. So if Pinnock can beat out Harper, that goes to show just how talented he is. But you look at UC Davis's offense, they returned 5 starting offensive linemen, and they returned their leading receiver from last year. They have a first-team all-conference tight end coming back as well. And so the talent is there offensively. And then defensively, they do lose a lot of production, but they bring back the Connors brothers, who are both All-Americans. And then they brought in 4 all-conference FCS transfers. And UC Davis is a school that doesn't really bring in a whole lot of transfers. Just, there's some academic things that make it a little difficult. But when they do bring in transfers, those guys usually hit really well. Like David Myers last year was an All-American linebacker. They brought him in from another FCS team. So they landed some FCS transfers that are pretty much plug and play guys, a couple guys from the Ivy League, coming in. So I think they have a chance to reload defensively. But then offensively, like I said, if their quarterback play can hit, they're going to have talent around them. They're going to have one of the more experienced offensive lines in the FCS. And so I think Davis has a chance to reload just fine and be right where they were last year.
Well, prime time for that game, 6 o'clock on ESPN, which is also a smart move because that game's been played during the day and nobody watches that. It's on ESPN. It's football. I don't know what the rating, if they get 1 million people, that'd be pretty good. I don't know if they will, knowing what else is going on Saturday night, but that's the time slot. If they're going to do it, play it then.
Yeah, and I mean, they'll go head-to-head pretty much with NC Central versus Southern. That game's on ABC. You would imagine the ABC game will outdraw the ESPN game. And plus the MEAC SWAC Challenge is really entertaining. They played in Atlanta, I believe. They'll get a good crowd there. Southern was a top team in the SWAC last year. NC Central, is typically, a top team out of the MEAC. They have their starting quarterback coming back in Walker Harris. So that should be another exciting matchup as well. In today's day and age, you can go dual screen. And so I imagine a lot of FCS fans will be watching both. Obviously UC Davis Mercer kind of has higher FCS national implications just with it being a ranked matchup. But I think the Central versus Southern game should be an entertaining one too.
And if you're really sick, you can watch CBS Sports Network Saturday night. Sam Houston plays Western Kentucky. There's a couple of old FCS schools. So if you want to go down that road, you can watch that one.
Yeah. Sam Houston was actually pretty good last year.
Not bad. Yep.
Somewhat surprisingly, but it's also, I can't remember what show I was on, but they asked do you think Missouri State and Delaware, do you think they'll transition well to the FBS? And I said, yeah, mostly because Conference USA isn't very good. Sam Houston went in there, and even Jacksonville State was good, in Conference USA last year as well. So that's another kind of sicko sort of game right there.
Fox and CBS also, everybody wants in. Fox has Fresno State and Kansas. CBS has Stanford and Hawaii. So there are all the networks will have football on outside of NBC. I don't know what they're doing on Saturday night. I wanted to get to a couple off the field things. We had some realignment news last week with Tennessee Tech leaving the Big South Ohio Valley to the SoCon. Give us the lowdown on this, that the SoCon adds a member in Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Pete Thamel was busy or something, or maybe he just didn't care. But it's not very rare you can break Division I realignment news. And I got the heads up, and at first I was like, "What? Really?" Just because the SoCon has been such a stable conference for more than 10 years now. Obviously they lost some big members like 2012, 2013 around there, but they've been pretty stable. And you always felt that as a conference, you're always kind of considering should we add? Do we need to add? And I thought the SoCon always felt really comfortable with their membership, especially with 9 football members.
Yep.
You can play, everyone. Now with, this isn't official yet, but I think the SoCon will probably move to 9 conference games as well at some point. Just so again, everyone plays everyone.
Everybody.
That's what they like to say. Everyone plays everyone. And now with 10 football members, they could do that if they did move to 10 football members. And 9 conference games. And I like this ad. Tennessee Tech was, I believe they hit 7 wins last year.
Yeah.
They return a bunch of guys. They also bring in some heavy hitting FCS transfers as well. So they're on the rise. I talked to the head coach last week. He loves their president. He loves their new AD. They're aggressive. They're funding things well. They're renovating their football stadium. I think they're expanding it. They're renovating it for next year. New facilities going up. And so I like the trajectory of Tennessee Tech, plus they're a high academic school. So all in all, I think it's a really good fit for Tennessee Tech and the SoCon. And, one of those moves that made you go, okay, I see how this makes sense on all fronts.
SoCon already has 2 Tennessee schools, obviously in Chattanooga and East Tennessee State. So geography works there. I'm intrigued to see if they keep getting better in football, that helps the SoCon. Your informal poll you put out, fans voted the SoCon as number 3 conference. I don't, in all of FCS, with maybe the United Athletic, I think they're right there. It's a good discussion, but they may be coming back. It's been a while. The SoCon might be getting its legs back underneath them.
Yeah, I think, the CAA this year, I still think is going to be decent, but once they start losing members, they'll be dropping off. I like the UAC, what they're doing, but I think the SoCon is right there, as well. They're kind of like we talked about, everyone playing everyone and kind of the top to bottom, parity in that league, I think makes it fun. But at the same time, it's like if the number 7 team in the conference beats the number 2 team in the conference, you can spin that as, oh, that shows like our number 7 team is really good. But from a national perspective, that really sets the number 2 team back as far as their playoff positioning. And like the Furman team a couple of years ago, they were without their starting quarterback and running back. They lost to like VMI or Wofford, and that pushed them way back in the seedings. And they had to go on the road and went to Montana in the quarterfinals and nearly won. If you get that game at home, Furman's probably in the semifinals, but they lost that game to a bad SoCon team, and that sets them back. And so I do think the SoCon is strong. I think top to bottom, it's as competitive as not the strongest, but it's as competitive as it gets. But you have to kind of have a sort of separation at the top to set yourself up in the playoffs and host those quarterfinal games instead of getting sent to NDSU every other year and losing by 16 to 20 points.
Last thing for you, the NCAA FCS are going to have their preseason press conference. I think they started doing this 2 years ago, I want to say. Obviously, there's a new chair of the FCS playoff committee. Anything you'd like to ask or get out with the move to Nashville? I think tickets are going to go on sale here in early September, which Bison fans will want to know with a new city. What are you interested in asking about when this press conference comes up on Thursday?
Yeah, I'll be interested to ask about just where the bid process is, because this is only in Nashville for 2 years. So I assume they're already started the bid process after this. And then also I'll probably ask, even though I've already been told, I've already been told this, but maybe I'll just confirm it again. They do expect to have like FCS championship logos, on the field, in like the end zones, like designed for the team specific teams playing. That I was uncertain about that just because it is turf. It is played at Vanderbilt. And so is it just going to be playing on Vanderbilt's turf with Vanderbilt's logo? But they are expected to have, be able to switch out the logos and stuff like that, which I think is obviously a great look for the FCS championship. So I'll maybe ask that again just to confirm it. But other than that, just get a sense of, the excitement of moving it to Nashville and those sort of things.
The TV nerd in me wants to know if they're going to keep the semis both on Saturday. I think that worked out really well. And on ABC, knowing again that day is filled. The NFL's back. The CFP is going to be there. I'd like to know if when we saw ratings-wise, Sam, it was dynamite. I think they'd like to do it again. I'm curious if that's going to happen.
Yeah, TV. That's always a good question, as well, to kind of see where they're sitting there, and it's. Sometimes it can be difficult for the FCS to find a win, but last year with the ratings and just the atmosphere of playing on that Monday night for the title game was like boom, like the FCS nailed it on that one.
No doubt. Great to see you, bud. Enjoy the games. Next week we can actually talk about football games. Looking forward to that. Thanks for the time as always, bud.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
There he goes. Sam Herder from Hero Sports, BetMGM, joins us each and every Monday to get us going with some FCS chatter. Yeah, we got football games. We got 10. You got 10 games on Saturday. 10. And, I mean, we went through the FCS games. The FBS ones, Iowa State, Kansas State, that's big, obviously, locally for us. A lot of connections there. We're going to try. We did this. Eric, how many years ago did we have Andy on from Ireland? That we did like 3-4 years ago when Nebraska played over there. We're going to try and do that again on Friday to have Hot Mike live in Ireland to get us ready for the season. You got Idaho State, UNLV. Not great. I don't even know if that's on television. Fresno, Kansas, Matt Ence's debut. I know a lot of people will be watching that around here. That's on Fox Saturday at 5:30. Something we'll keep our eyes on there. Sam Houston, Western Kentucky, 6 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. That's for our guy McFeely. He'll be watching. And then Stanford plays Hawaii on CBS at 6:30 on Saturday night. We're all set. It could be 85 out. Beautiful. We got our plans. We're all good. We got college football back on Saturday. Looking forward to it. We'll take a break. We come back. We'll wrap up our first hour. Got a couple emails to go to. Colpack coming up here in a few minutes. We roll on a busy Monday. Glad you're joining us. Back on Hot Mic after this.